So this is a very important video to understand. So I will go through variables in Python step by step, and I will mention some of the important things, concepts that you need to understand in this video, because variables are a crucial part of programming. It's for all the programming languages. And when you get the idea, it will be easier to understand other videos, upcoming videos. Okay, so I will go through some steps and I will explain everything one by one. But before getting into variables, I want to explain something very important. So what does a program consist of? So to understand this, I first want to give you an example. For example, in your daily life, you use Google Maps, right? And we have written a program called print hello world. And in this program, it was just one line of code. And we just printed hello world by using print function. So, and we have mentioned Google Maps. So these two programs, they are really different from each other. But every program has two main things, including these two programs. And these are data and instructions. For example, we have data and instructions. A program is made up of these two elements. For example, let's take Google Maps as an example. When you think about it, you just get into application and you just point out some start point and end point. For example, you want to go from point A to point B. So this is basically your data. You have to give this to your application if you want to go somewhere. And it's great to use this data, but it's meaningless if you don't have some instructions. For example, you want to go from point A to point B. That's cool, but you need some instructions to go from somewhere to somewhere. For example, it's just giving you some instructions like turn right, turn left, go for 100 kilometers. So these are instructions, and these are completing each other. So data and instructions are crucial, are fundamental for every program we see. So we have data, and here in variables, we actually use this data. We actually just store it to make it meaningful and actually to manage our data. Okay, that's great. We understood how we use data and instructions in Google Maps, but what about our print hello world function? Here we have two main things as well. For example, hello world is our data, all right? It's our data. And we have a function to print out this data, this message, hello world. And this is our function print, right? And this is our basically instructions. So even in this basic program, we have two things, data and instructions. That's cool. Now we can get into variables. We have data, we have instructions, basically our functions in our programs. And to manage this data, we need variables. And why do we need variables? Instead of managing this data, can't we use this directly? Okay, we need it because we don't want, we want to avoid repetition. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And the other thing is, we want to make our code readable and manageable. We want to make it readable and manageable. I hope I have written it correctly, but I think it's wrong. So please correct it in the comments. So here I'm going to show you how we actually eliminate unnecessary repetition using variables. For example, here I have my hello text, but I'm going to just delete this line of code. So I'm going to print hello world, That's all I know for now, hello world. And I'm going to just copy and paste this for like 10 times, 15 times, doesn't matter. So when I want to change this message, for example, when I want to make it instead of hello world, hello friend, I have to go through every occurrence in my program and need to change it. For example, here I will say, let's say hello friend. So when I want to make it hello friend for every single occurrence, I need to go here and I need to say, for example, hello friend. And this is a lot of work. Imagine we can have programs, including thousands of lines of code, and going all of the occurrences and changing them is a lot of work. So instead of doing this, I will just delete all of these lines and I will just create a variable. So let's say hello text, and I'm gonna make it, let's say, hello world. So now I'm gonna print my hello text again instead of just printing hello world. So let's say hello text. So I'm gonna copy and paste it. I'm just clicking Control D. So it can be, as many times as you want. So here, when I want to change my message, I can just go to my variable, and I can say, let's first print this out. When I print this out, I will see that. And when I want to change it, I want to make it hello friend, for example. I don't have to go to every occurrence in my program. Just changing my variable name is enough for me. So let's just run it again. And you see that? I don't need to do anything else. So this was the first thing. And it's also very good for managing and, maintaining your data. What I mean by that, for example, you want to find the area of a rectangle. So to be able to do that, you have, length and let's say 10, and you have a width, let's say 5. And to be able to find the area, you just print out length, and multiply by width, right? So this is great. But what if I didn't use a variable name here? For example, what if I say print 10 times 5? Okay, so that's also all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But when someone comes to my code and, trying to understand, they're going to ask, so what he is meaning by 10 or 5, It can be anything. It can be someone's age, it can be the money I have. But by using variables, everything is clear. I use length, multiply by width, and I get my area. We can even say something like that. Area is length multiplied by width. We can do something like that. And here we can print out our area, which is area, right? So this is manageable and this is readable for others as well, because we don't write code just to write it on ourselves. We can work with a group of people to create some big projects, or we can come to our code in near future just to analyze it, just to see it again, just to change something. And we need to be able to understand what's going on, what are the things that I'm using. And everything should be manageable and readable. That's very important. So this is basically why we use variables in our programs. Of course, that's not all. We do have a lot of things, but I don't want you to memorize them. We'll go step by step and we'll understand everything. In other videos, we'll be using variables a lot, and you will see why we use actually variables. So I hope these two things made sense in your mind, and in our upcoming lessons, we'll understand variables thoroughly. So here, assigning values to variables, it's also very important. So we have basically used some variables, but how were we able to do that? We basically, for example, let's say age, it's a variable name. And when we use assignment operator and say, for example, 30, basically we were able to assign this value to this variable, or we were able to store this value into this variable. And to be able to do that, we have used assignment operator. That's cool. But what is a variable, really? So why do we use it? So my English just sucks, but I want to give you some idea. Maybe, I'm a non-native speaker. That's why I see things differently, compared to native speakers. So I want to give you some idea. For example, variable, it comes from vary and able, right? So it basically means that, something's content, let's say its content, some variable's content is able to vary. It's actually able to change. So that's very important. So what I mean by that? What I mean by that is, for example, we have used a variable, let's say age is 30. Then when I want to change it, since its content is able to vary, I can make it, for example, let's say print age, and I will get the result 30, right? We don't have any problem with that. And when I want to change it, for example, let's make it 42. And in this example, when I print this out, I will get, when I print age out, I will get 42. So that's cool. When we use variables, we can actually change their content. Okay, that's very important. So here we can, if we want to assign some other values to our variables, we can easily do them using variables. That's cool. So the other thing is, how do variables work in memory? So people have been using, assigning values to variables or storing values into variables, for almost 70 years, since 1950s. And that's all right. I'm not here to change, these terms. But there's something very important that we need to understand. And when we understand this, and when we see some things in our upcoming videos like mutable objects, immutable objects, lists, tuples, some things will make more sense. And we will be able to understand concepts in an easier way. So you might be confused, I don't know anything about memory, I'm just starting a Python tutorial. Don't worry, I will give you the idea here. So you actually know what memory is. For example, in your smartphone, in your computer, you have memory like like 4 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, or 256 gigabytes. So you have your memory, and basically all of your applications, images, everything is stored in that memory. Do you have any problem with that? No. So when we write our programs, we actually store everything in that same memory as well. It's not just flying out and we lose everything we write in these programs. These things also should be stored in memory. So what I'm gonna show you, how these variables and values are working in our memory. So I'm gonna just, draw a memory here. So let's say this is our memory, and we have our applications like images, everything, like for example applications, YouTube, Google Maps, some games, everything. And we also have our programs. For example, in one of our programs we just said hello text equals hello world, and that's gonna be stored in this same memory as well. And how can we do that? It's really easy. So Python does something very important here, when we assign a value to a variable. And instead of using, assigning values to variables or storing values into variables, we'll use something different. So you'll maybe say, okay, if it's wrong, why did you use it? Because, it's commonly used, and I can't say it's just wrong, but thinking about some other concepts, some other terms will make things easier in our upcoming videos. So when we just do something like that, Python just takes this hello world, okay? Hello world. And it's just storing it in our memory, which is very important. And here we actually, for example, if it needs 4 bytes, if it needs, 50 bytes, if it needs any number of bytes, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know about that detail now. But it just takes it and just stores some memory for our hello world. Then it creates a variable name, which is our hello text, which is our hello text, and then makes this variable name a reference to our value hello world. This is very important. So there is no some other places, in our memory called hello text, and we put our hello world into that hello text. We store our hello world into that hello text. Our variables are just references to our values. Okay, but I will be using that, assigning values to variables or storing values into variables. I will use these terms, in my upcoming videos. But what you need to understand, how this thing works in memory, is very, very important. All right, it's very important to understand. So here, I'm gonna say it again. Our variable names are just references to our values. For example, when you type something like this, print hello text, when you type something like this, Python is just looking for the value that is referenced by this variable. And if it can find it, for example, hello world, we just get the result, which is hello world here. Okay, so again, our variables are references to our values. Okay, you can use assigning values to variables, storing values into variables, but that's the thing that you need to understand. And when you understand this, you won't have any problems understanding immutable and mutable objects, lists, tuples. It will be really easy for you, all right? Okay, that's cool. So here, I've told you that these are variables. Their content is able to vary. So what I mean by that, for example, let's say hello text equal to, for example, just hello, okay, instead of hello world. So in this regard, Python does the same thing. It just creates some memory. It just allocates some memory for this hello, right? And what's our reference? Our reference is same. Our variable name is same, which is hello text. Then it makes, Python makes this variable a reference to this value. And now there is no reference for this hello world. But what happens to this? So in languages like Java and Python, there's something called garbage collector. It basically collects some values that is not referenced by some variables. So in this regard, this variable is referencing this value, and there is no reference for this value. What's gonna happen? The garbage collector is just deleting this. It's just removing this out of our memory. That makes sense, right? Because there can be thousands of variables, values that are not referenced, and we don't want to store them in our memory. In C, you have to do this manually, but in languages like Python and Java, we have garbage collector. I hope that makes sense. So that's great. And we have some rules for, writing our variable names, which is very important as well. So there's a great saying from Guido van Rossum, creator of Python. He says, code is read much more often than it's written. That's very important. Code is read much more often than it's written. So when you understand this logic, everything will make more sense. You don't write code to just read it. You write code so that some other people, your colleagues, your peers, can understand it, can read it easily. Or even if you are, creating your own projects. In the near future, you'll be looking at that project and you will want to understand that project. And to be able to do this, you need to make your code as clear as possible. And there are some guides that we can follow. For example, for Python, it's PEPA. And it's just giving us some suggestions. You can write variable names this way, function names for class names as well. And in my videos, I will be following these rules. All right. So one of the rules for variable names should start with either a letter or underscore. Okay? It should start with letter or underscore. That's very important. All right. So the other thing is, can be variable names in Python are case sensitive. For example, name and name with capital N are different variables. These are different variables. Okay. The other thing is a variable name cannot start with a number, but it can contain a number. Okay? Can't start with a number, can contain numbers. For example, you can say name 1, but you can't say one name. Okay? That's not possible. That's okay. All right? When your variable names contain more than one word, you can just separate them with underscores. For example, I've used this. Instead of writing hello text, you should do something like this. But if you're coming from other programming languages like C or Java, you might be familiar with camel case, which is something like that. Hello text. You start with a capital letter for the second and third. And that's all right. You can go with this one as well. But in my videos, I will be following Python guideline, which is, PEP8. And it just suggests us to use underscores to separating words. All right. So that was a very important one. I hope you get the idea. So there's nothing left I should explain in this variable video. So everything will make sense, when we go through our videos, when we study on them, and we'll also have some projects. And at the end of this course, you'll be a Python expert. You'll be able to, switch some other areas because you will have a thorough understanding on Python. And what I want from you won't need me at the end of these tutorials. Okay? So, just try to understand the logic. Please take some notes and it will be easier for you. So if you like the video, please just press the like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll learn a lot of things together and I will see you in the next one.